Welcome to Maple Leafs Hot Stove Podcast, episode 113. I'm Nick Ashbourne, joined as always by Anthony Petrielli. It's been an adventure over the last few weeks. We did sort of the crisis of confidence. We did the low point. I feel like the direction of where the season is going to some degree is established, although maybe the last little bit has changed some minds. The Maple Leafs are coming off a 3-1 road trip since we last talked. As we were just saying before we recorded, arguably their best effort against Seattle was unrewarded, and then they took out that Western stretch against the Canucks, Flames, and then a real team in the Oilers at the end there. Let's start with the road trip, and we can spread out a little bit from there. Anthony, do you feel like you learned anything about your Maple Leafs from watching them, actually play some functional games and get a couple points?
Well, they're way better when William Nylander is in the lineup as
They
opposed to when he's
sure are.
not. So, you kind of watch it and think to yourself, you would have liked to have had him for that homestand where it fell apart, got away from them, however else you want to phrase it. He makes a significant difference. Without him, it feels like one guy really at Matthews. Like they have other players that can chip in and contribute, but in terms of guys that can really drive it, it's really Matthews and Nylander right now. And when it's just one, it's so much easier to bottle them up. And if you really look at the trip that just happened, like Matthews wasn't particularly good. Like he
No,
didn't produce.
it was Nylander. Like that sounds simplistic, but like against Calgary, it really was Nylander, especially. And yeah, like the production was there. Also, I thought the game was there too. Like
Like
against
Matthews didn't
Edmonton,
score a goal in this four
yeah,
game road trip. Yeah, like he had the shootout
McMahon was getting those
against.
those showcase empty netters, but that line wasn't exactly humming.
Yeah, and then it kind of the way the trickle down effect of all of that and how it plays out, it's you can put Matthew Nyes on the third line, scores a big goal against the Oilers. Matthias Michelli contributes and look, he's a reasonably skilled player that can chip in offense, but without a guy like Nylander to really actually drive what's happening, I mean, he's obviously far less effective. He's not a driver in and of himself, even though at times he has driven, I felt at least, Tavares and Nyes. He's not the guy you actually want to be driving that line. Tavares can't really do it at this stage. It's like,
And Tavares and Nyes didn't really finish for him too. So like even though there's
yeah,
some good underlyings with Michelli and Tavares and no Nylander, but like it never actually resulted in anything the way Tavares has been going.
my my ultimate feelings on this four-game trip where they win three games, and we were just saying before we started recording, ironically, their best game might have been Seattle, probably was Seattle, and they don't win that game. It's the one loss on the mark. So I mean, they were pretty close to potential 3-0 or 4-0 situation. But I guess sort of I look at it and say I would still sell. To what extent? It really depends on what you're getting offered. Obviously, like sure, I would trade Brandon Carlo or Oliver Ekman-Larsson in the right kind of deal, but I'm not giving them away. Like they're both good defensemen. Like you don't just give them away. And like a first round pick is not enough for either guy, considering they both have term and the premium for what each of them do individually. Like I would need a legitimate prospect to go along with them. And then like who is that prospect and do like it's a little bit more complicated than just like okay, like trade Ekman Larson for a first round pick. You're having a good like he's having a good year. Like it's a little bit more than that. But what I kind of do hope, while I still think that they should sell, what I hope is it maybe pumps the brakes a little bit on the chatter of this being just like some like god awful team that just needs to tear it down and start all over again. I'm not there yet with this group. And I look at the right now in the league as of this recording, five of the top 10 teams in the league are in the Atlantic. The Atlantic's a wagon. If the Leafs were in any other division, I don't even know if they would be selling. I think you would honestly look at them in any other division in this league and say, like, yeah, they're probably making the playoffs. And that's in a year where we've said this before, like nothing has gone right essentially for them. And they're still kind of in the mix, and the only reason they're not like really, really in the mix is because their division's been incredible. And you not only would have them playing in any other division, which would be way worse, but their schedule would be a lot easier because they wouldn't be in the hardest division. Like you kind of go down the line of it, right? It's like they beat the Oilers, and the Oilers are talking about trading for Bobby McMahon and how they're gonna buy and try for a cup run, and they should. They've been to the cup the past 2 years. The Leafs have one less point than them. It's just that's the kind of year it's been. I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater because of that, though.
I think there's a couple aspects to that too. I mean, one of them, I think we've been fairly clear on this show for, weeks and months even. One of the factors is the coach. So, if you get a different, it's worth knowing what some of these guys do with a different coach. Like it just kind of is. I don't think there's a lot of defenders for Berube at this point. When it comes to selling, yeah, I mean, I think it would be you cannot justify holding on to Lawton or McMahon if you're not resigning. They are not good enough for a self rental. Like that, the self rental is
No.
for
Yeah.
contenders. They are not a contender. Even if they somehow snuck into the playoffs, they're not a contender. So no, none of the self-rental stuff. And then the other things, yeah, it is kind of on a case-by-case basis. It is sort of what the offers are. I would lean like I'm leaning in on trading Ekman Larson again, just because I think from an asset management perspective, like this is a time for him. And he's getting to an age where you can't be super confident you're going to get what you get from him. Like if Ekman Larson was 29, then it'd be like, okay, even if it's a big package, like you need defensemen and he's going to be a huge part of that. And, he's at an age where, even next year, you can't be super confident he's going to give you. I mean, he's not going to probably give you offensively what he gave you this year because that's just been such an outlier for his recent career. But I think he's at an age where even though you want to keep some guys around, as you said, the team will try and win next year. Like that's almost certainly true. Matthews is still under contract with this team. So is Nylander.
They should try to win next year, just to be clear.
Yeah,
They
for
they
sure.
they still won't have a first round pick one of the next 2 years after this year. Like it
Yeah,
makes no sense to just be bad.
there's no incentive for a full tank for this group, and I think as much as there are existential questions about the ceiling of what this operation is, and we talked about that. We went a little bit into the fuzzier areas last week with the leadership and the character of the group and what can they ultimately achieve. Like as much as you can argue about that, like there isn't, as you said, there's no incentive to go right down to the bottom. Like this year, there was in terms of if you could get that top five pick after this winning streak, it's not impossible, but it's not really plausible enough to be worth talking
And
about. Like it's
the
not
number of
really.
guys they would need to shut down, their goaltending
And the
alone.
goalies, yeah,
I
like
like they have
two good
three.
goalies.
Like they have
Oh,
three good goalies. You'd have to go down. Like you'd have to trade for someone borderline at this point and put him in, just knowing that like a waiver claim some guy that's bad. Like their goaltending alone is is really talented. I'm not going to say it's really good
goaltending
because they
plus
haven't been, but
Matthews plus Nylander, like that's enough.
yeah, yeah,
That's enough to have them not absolutely crater.
to be 500 at least the rest of the way. And I honestly, their schedule is tough when they get back from the Olympics, that first run of the back-to-back in Florida and then the Senators. But I honestly think their March schedule is pretty easy. Like relative to the NHL. Like we had talked about it going into that 2.5 week stretch of the 4 game road trip and the 5 game homestand. It was like if they can get through this, the rest of the schedule is pretty easy. Like starting with the Western trip they just did, like Calgary and Vancouver stink, and then you got to win one out of two against Seattle and Edmonton. That's what ended up happening. After the Florida, Florida, Tampa, Senators, which are all just tough divisional games, the schedule gets pretty easy the rest of the way, I would say, in my estimation anyway, because like that week of the trade deadline, you're playing Philly at home, New Jersey, and the Rangers, unless you think Nick Bugstad is moving the needle for the Devils over there. And then it's like go through the rest of it. It's some tough weeks. Like they play Tampa, the Habs, the Ducks, the Sabres. Like I'm not saying those are gimmies, like the Minnesota Wild. Like that's a reasonably difficult 5 game stretch, but to me, it's nothing crazy, sort of the rest of the way. It's a road heavy schedule, which is unfortunate, although one might argue it might actually be better for them to kind of just get away from the market here, so to speak, and see what they can do. But I don't know. I look at it and say the schedule with their goaltending and the two guys you just mentioned alone is probably enough to keep them like fairly competitive and into place. I think I just think some of the chatter on what this team is or what they can be really needs to kind of take a step back and say like, okay, the Atlantic is crazy this year. Like this is like an insane year in their division. And that's not an excuse. It's a reality. If they have five 100-point teams in their division, like that's messed up. That's ridiculous. I don't know what else you would say. Like that's insane. That happens. And I shade towards, I think Boston in particular is primed to fall off. I still think some of these teams are going to fall off, but right now it's crazy. And then you tack on the injuries that they've battled. You've tacked on the coaching staff that they've battled. Like if Mark Savard wasn't here, how many more
That's a
points do
very
they
funny
have
way
right
to
now?
frame it. They've
Yeah,
battled their own coaching staff.
they have. Like that also bothered me this road trip. It was, Morgan Rielly gets hurt. And finally, I was like, okay, perfect. The defense is going to make sense. You're finally going to have your two righties in the top four and your two lefties in the top four. And you're not going to have this, like, just not good Riley Carlo pairing. And look, they didn't, like, dominate the Oilers or anything like that. So I'm not saying that the team looked brand new, but it definitely felt to me less these guys are giving up free goals against. And that's what Morgan Riley's largely been this year. There's no nice way of putting it. He almost feels like a free goal against a game. And then you have like Max Domi up on the top line, and like he helped facilitate a free goal against the Oilers. And that
That
line
was
was terrible against Calgary,
unbelievable.
right?
Truly
And
an unbelievable effort in
that
his own zone on that goal.
no, yeah, that was anything I'm gonna say about it's not nice. Like that's not a serious effort. And he did pick up a point after on the power play. But that's honestly, it's an inexcusable drive-by to me at this point in the season with where they're at in the standings and the teams trying to sit there and say like, no, like we want to go on a run and try to like make it. And you have a guy who basically holds you hostage to play on that top line spot. And that's the crap that he does. And then people sit there somehow and they still defend him because I don't know, once every 35 games he'll get into a fight or something. But that's really the Domi. And then people say like he hustles. I'm like, that's not hustling. That that is a lack of effort at a pivotal moment. And he does that on that side of the ice night in and night out. That's what he looks like defensively. And so, you know, then you tie it again back to Riley, who for me has also just been a free goal against night in, night out. And he comes out and I thought their defense just looked a lot more normal. I'd want to call it just, yeah, two lefties, two righties. Carlo looked I Carlo looks much better without Riley for me. I know some of the numbers don't necessarily indicate that in terms of play driving. I think there's a lot of noise in that, in which you can't, I mean, you can only hope to contain Connor McDavid. Like, you're not going to beat him by dominating him. You're going to beat him by simplifying defensively and locking things down. And so, like McCabe and Carlos' numbers might not have been necessarily the greatest against McDavid. Generally speaking, though, they did about as good of a job as you could humanly do against McDavid at this point in the league for anybody. And that's how I kind of look at him. I look at him as I think he's a really good defender, like in terms of defending and playing defense. He can't do anything with the puck at all. And so if you just play him in a defensive role and a matchup role, and that's all he focuses on, and it's like play against good players and don't get scored on, I think he's got a chance to do it. Like when he came back, that was a pairing we wanted to see. We talked about it, right? Put him with McCabe. Like you brought him in to be a big time shutdown defenseman. Chris Tanev's may or may not be out for the year. Go tell him to do what you paid a big price for him to do. Don't tell him to go there and play defensive defenseman role for Morgan Rielly, who's just coughing pucks up anyways all night. Like, make him do the thing that you actually brought him in and what he's known for, and give him a real chance. And then Stetcher, Ekman Larson, like that'd be the only argument I'd make is like, yeah, fine. If you want to put Rielly with Ekman Larson for that offensive pairing, which I thought was fine, do that. But I just it frustrated me because it just feels like they booted around the defense, months after they pissed around the forward group because Scott Lawton broke his foot in preseason. It's like, well, let's play Max Domi at center and watch that be terrible for 2 months. And like those two things will stand out for me, along with just like the complete stubbornness to not get rid of this power play coach for so long, as like three major reasons should they miss the playoffs, why they missed the playoffs.
Yeah, there's a lot that happened in their season that is kind of unforced errors. And that is, that's the injury stuff. That's the fact that Stolarz, when he was healthy, was just significantly worse than you had any reason to expect he would be. Great game against Edmonton, deserves credit for that. But
Right?
I still think he's a talented goalie, but came out at the beginning of the year and he really cost you early. And then yeah, you have all these injuries and you have the slow start from Matthews, but some of it are errors that, like you said, it's their coaching staff who put them in that poor position to succeed. And with Carlo in particular, I know that he was brought in with the idea that he could play with Rielly. Like, how many times has there been an idea that someone could play with Rielly? And the thing is, it's just like when he's playing with Rielly, it just feels like he is kind of like trying to react off Rielly, and he's not playing his like when he's playing with McCabe. I think he even said after the game just something about like, oh, I can just be in my gap, I can be in my lane and play my game. Like he's playing his game. He's not playing like a version of his game as it pertains to somebody else. And like that is
I
part of
gotta
the
play
issue.
defense because I'm playing with this guy who's skating up the ice, and I got it. Like, that's not how he should be playing.
Yeah, and the Rielly storyline obviously bubbled up because people are like, "Oh, without Rielly, this is the record." And it's noisy. It's over many years. I get it. I think that a lot of what's happened with Rielly is not necessarily that like Rielly is a bad player. It's more that Rielly's been put in situations, he's been given too much of a load. He's been asked to do things that he's not good at, and people haven't been realistic about what kind of player he is. And that has to do with how long he's been there. It has to do with the contract, has to do with a lot of things. But when people say like, "Oh, Rielly's gone, therefore they're going to thrive," like as you mentioned, the defense slotted in a way that made sense after that happened. But I think there is also a world where you can create a defense with Rielly that works. You just have to like pretty severely limit his role, and they just haven't really done that.
That's the one thing I'll really give Rielly in the whole scheme of it is like that's not his fault. The D pairings
No.
being like, how I don't understand how we watched that whole homestand with McCabe and Ekman Larson on his right side paired as a shutdown pairing. Like who the who came up with that? That like I couldn't even imagine someone presenting that idea to me and taking that seriously for even a hot second. It just made no, and they were getting torched. McCabe was getting cooked night after night. It just looked
And there are
terrible.
two options, right? There's Carlo and Stetcher. Like there are
Like,
two more legitimate options that
and
make sense.
and they actively went, you know what, we'll do, we'll pick the worst of those three options and the one that's not even really should be on the table. Like, I don't understand. It really frustrates me because I again, like I've said this whole time, like I think if they were healthy all year, they would be in the playoffs. Even still, with even as good as the Atlantic has been, I think that they probably take some points off Detroit and Buffalo in all the games that they played against them. Like I think if Nylander was healthy, they probably beat Detroit, probably in regulation, actually. That game in Toronto, like 2 weeks ago now. And so there's like that angle, but then it's just like I don't think people are fully grasping like how bad of a job the coaching staff has done. And he had this quote, I've been meaning to write about it. Um, Maybe I'll get some time over the Olympic break here. We'll see. But he was lamenting how last year they had the second or third highest dump in rate in the league, and how it was essentially like a boring and difficult way to play hockey, but it was the right way to play hockey and it wins you hockey games. And you can just see he has this very specific view of what is required to win hockey games at the NHL level. And it's very Florida-ish. But the problem is Florida has a way better roster to play that way. And it's like up and down the lineup. It's not just like having Matthew Tkachuk. It's like there's like Sam Bennett is legitimately one of the best forechecking centers in the league. And then you're looking at the Leafs on the flip side, and it's like John Tavares is your 2C. He can't even skate into the forecheck fast enough to get there. Like he's a strong guy. Like he's a strong man. If he's there, more often than not, he actually wins the battle. But him consistently getting there is just not that's not happening at 35. Like that's not Matthews' game. It's definitely not going to be his game with like Max Domi on the right wing. And then you kind of just like go up and down the lineup. Like their second line right now is Matias Maccelli, John Tavares, William Nylander. Who's forechecking? And so I again, like I think sort of what happened is he wanted him to play this way. It wasn't going well. I think he eventually gave in a little bit and they started breaking out using the middle of the ice more, which we talked about at the time. And then they went on that like win streak where they stopped dumping the puck in as much. Like they were starting to make plays. Like you watch them regroup a lot more now than they were going on early in the season. He actually has kind of stopped saying like play north, which is funny. I don't know if someone said like you're basically becoming a meme with that. Like you got to cut it out. Um, but when they went back on the losing streak, like he kept reiterating the like guys got to play the right way. And because in his mind, it's like, well, you got to dump the puck in. Like you want to win games, like you got to slow things down through the neutral zone, get it deep, win battles. And the funny thing is, I do think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't think he does a good job of managing it. It's like when I'm watching Easton Cowan try to skate over center and make plays at the blue line off the rush, like that's terrible hockey. Like that can't happen. But if William Nylander's looking at me saying like I'm skating through the neutral zone, I'm making a play. It's like absolutely you are. Like you should be doing that, right? And so there's just like no gray areas. Like you have this like 69 goal scorer, Auston Matthews, and they're like, you know what you should do? You should get like the toughest defensive minutes of any 1C in the league, and also dump pucks in and forecheck for them all night. And also your wingers aren't going to be very good. And Matthews probably looking, going like, what are we doing here? Like I don't think that the Matthews playing better of late is nearly as injury related as other people. I think we talked about this last week, right? Like I honestly think it's because like they changed the way that they were playing. Like his matchups are still crappy again. Like they weren't for a little bit there, but they're back to being crappy. And but they play a little bit differently, and he's like, all right, like I'll have the puck a little bit more and I'll make plays. But I think there was a while where he was sitting there going like, I'm not doing this. Like this is ridiculous.
Well, it kind of speaks to the big, and I'm going to lump Berube and Treliving into one blob here, which I think is fair because Treliving has sort of stood by Berube through thick and thin, basically,
I
and seems to reinforce his
I think those
philosophies.
two are weird, I should say, as you get to this point. Like Tree Living has to own it because Berube he's kept him and stood by him to what you're saying. But I don't know. There's a lot of signs to me that there's a clear disconnect between these two guys.
I think there isn't much disconnect between what they say, but sometimes Treliving will make roster moves that don't necessarily agree on paper with Berube's coaching philosophy. But it feels to me like part of the idea was these guys come on board and it's like, oh man, like this Leafs team is, everything you would have said about them. Like they're skilled, but they're like soft and they're mentally weak and they have all the talent in the world, but they don't play the right way. And what we need to do here is get these guys and get them to apply their talents to the right way to win hockey games. And it's like, okay, cool. But like there's no such thing as a philosophy that's totally absent of the players involved in it. And I think to some degree, like you brought in a coach and a play style that doesn't really fit to the players you have. So your options are either like if you truly believe like the Krebs Berube North South, whatever you want to call it, is like that is your North Star and that is the way you win hockey games and you can't win hockey games any other way, then you don't have the right players for that project and you never have. So it's like either you weren't going to turn these guys into the type of team that Berube, I don't know, kind of likes, wants, however you want to put that. And so it's like either you have a philosophy and you get the players to fit that philosophy, or you have a little bit of flexibility. And like there, maybe it's compromise, maybe there's meeting people in the middle, maybe there's a way to make that work. It's like you don't have to necessarily be like, we're the most open end-to-end hockey team the world has ever seen, and we're willing to cheat for offense all the time. I'm not saying that, but just like it just doesn't seem like they're aware of the team that they have, and it doesn't seem like there's any flexibility in what they do. And it just resulted in this odd mishmash of ideas and players in kind of a slurry here that's not coherent. And there's a lot of reasons why things have not really gone well for the Leafs this year. We've gone through a lot of them on various episodes, including this one. But like that feels like one of the problems at the heart of the Leafs is that it's not a coherent outfit because there are conflicting visions, whether it's the players, the coaches. As you said, there's sometimes Treliving makes a move that doesn't seem to fit with Berube. Like the whole thing is just, it's kind of messy in a way that it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah, and again, like I just keep going back to certain things where I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh, did in Brad's mind when he acquired Scott Laughton and paid up a pretty penny to get him, did he think to himself, you know what, this guy's gonna just center Kelly Yarncroke and Steven Lorentz and play like 10 minutes a night. Once in a while, they'll throw him a bone up the lineup, and that's really it. Like, is that what he thought when he was acquiring him? Because then, if so, that's a conversation for Treliving. So why'd you pay a first round pick for that then? Like, did you think he was a good player who was going to help and move around your lineup and be this like Swiss Army knife character guy? Or, which I think he can be to some degree, or did you just pay a first to have a fourth line center play very minimal ice time and not really impact the game that much? Like, was that your plan?
And to be fair, he really struggled when he first arrived, but then, he has clearly come back around and there has not been an adjustment to that reality. Like I understand that there was a moment when making him the 4C kind of made sense based on how he was playing, but
Yeah.
that's not the case. And that hasn't been the case really for this season.
No, not at all. Especially as other forwards have struggled up the lineup. It's not like the other guys have been so good this whole time. We're going, I can't move Scott Laughton up. Like Michelli and Domi and whoever else, Robertson, Cowan, like all these guys are bringing it every single night. So, you know, what are you gonna do? It's just a tough one. It's not like Lawton is like the Leafs of the Atlantic Division. We're like, well, those five other teams have been so good, like you can only do so much. Like those guys have all taken turns, and Lawton included, of not playing good hockey. Like you easily could have moved things around. I just again, like you kind of just go through it, and I think with a coach who was a little bit more dialed in on the lineup and a little bit more in tune with making proper and necessary adjustments and understanding who fits where and what and why. I think they're still probably in the playoffs this year, despite everything. I really do. I can't get over how much they've booted around the lineup and just made questionable things, and not things that we were calling in retrospect. They're things that we were consistently, I feel like, ahead of the conversation on or understanding of it. Is like a month ago we were saying, well, Tavares playing really poorly. Are you just gonna like keep watching him play bad on your second line? And that's all they did. They at no point did they change it. It was just like, yeah, he's just gonna stink on your second line, your 2C hole this entire time. Like at no point. I don't know if they win a single game more or get a single point more if they move up Nick Waugh for a couple games or Scott Laughton or whatever. But like at some point, you probably had to make that change because it was just so blatantly bad. And they just never did. Like that game against Edmonton was kind of the first time where it was like Tavares didn't even play the second most of their center group. It was Nick Waugh. And then he played like I think like 10 seconds more than Scott Lawton. So they actually kind of jumbled it. It was like Matthews played 21 plus, and then they had these three guys that were sort of on the same level playing field. And it was like, where was that 3 weeks ago? I mean, Tavares has clearly been bad for like in a ridiculously long time now. This is not new. Like this is how he's looked for quite a big period. I really like Tavares. He stayed, he signed in the first place, all this stuff. He's still very productive given his age, all these things. But you had to kind of be honest about it as to what was happening. And so I just, it's a frustrating one. But then as we look at it all, I still think you probably have to sell just given how far back they are. It's not like we're talking about them being 2 points back. It's not like they're not a couple wins and someone else loses a couple from like 5 points is a lot. And then you also have this other jumble of teams that still very much consider themselves in it, be it Washington, be it Florida for now. Like it's a lot. So you do have to start selling. What that looks like though is tricky when you're trying to be good next year, Nick.
I think also when people talk about a sell, like, I don't know, I haven't looked at Money Puck or whatever it is today, but like, let's say it's 10% for sake of argument. Like, if you sell from that, you're not going from 10% to 0%. You're going from 10% to whatever, let's say 4%, whatever. Like it's actually just a piece of the pie. Like you could still go on that miracle run in theory and make it in, or Boston can crash out. Like I'm not like that
I feel like
opportunity.
miracle run is harsh. Like a run for sure, but I don't know
Okay.
if it's a miracle. We're not
Okay,
in
maybe
miracle
not
territory yet.
quite miracle run, but you know what I mean? Like it,
It's yeah.
you haven't totally closed the door on your own fate. Like that, the
No.
possibility of them making the playoffs is already like a sunshine and rainbows optimistic outcome. So like all you're doing is making that sliver a smaller sliver for the benefit of getting, potentially whatever the assets you can get back are. And right now, it just seems very clear that that is a trade worth making for the franchise. Like close down an already small sliver in half and you get the picks you need, you get prospects, whatever it is. So part of what I wanted to, talk about in this episode, because I think most people are on board with the idea that like this is a sell at this point. And, we will have plenty of time to talk about the actual trades that they make when at such time that comes up. It's just like, what do you do with the rest of this season to make it productive for your franchise? Because you can't, as we said, you can't really bottom out. You're not going to get the top five pick. So, like, what are you doing, barring again that great run where you make the playoffs and that would be an outcome they'd be happy with? But like, assuming, in the 90% sliver, like, what does that look like in a way that helps you in the future?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's bringing up a few young guys to see, what you have in them and try to get a rough idea of can you trust this guy next year? Is this a potential solution? It's like, I mean, I've wanted to see Jacob Quillen for quite some time here and get an actual run of play from him and just have an idea of is this a potential center, right? Because you have three signed for next year unless you move one of them. So, or is he a guy you start on the wing or something like that? Like what's the deal with Easton Cowan? Are they just going to completely ruin his development this year? It's like we talked about it so much, so often in preseason. This was the most predictable Leaf thing ever. You keep this guy up. Fans all the time go, "Oh, what do you mean? Who cares if the guy stays up and plays? Like he'll practice with the team and travel and stuff." It's like, how does that look now? He's healthy scratched. He looks terrible when he's in the lineup. He's falling down all over the ice. He's not playing proper hockey at all. He's completely pushed down the lineup. His minutes are down. He hasn't touched 14 minutes. He hasn't even touched 13 and a half minutes in the year 2026. He played as many hockey games this week as you and I did, Nick, in the NHL. If you count my men's league games, I actually played more games than he did. Like, it's it's stunning to me. So, regardless of whether he's on the Leafs or Marlies the rest of the way, like I don't even care at that point. It's like that guy's got to be playing hockey games. This is so ridiculous that it went to this level. I just it's so frustrating. Like a properly well-run, well-oiled organization looks at that guy in preseason who had 0 goals in the preseason, by the way, and says, go down and play in the American League, dominate the league for 40 games. And if you do, we will bring you up and you will stay the rest of the way. That's what like an actual team does. And then there's the Leafs version where it's like, you scored 0 goals in preseason, but once in a while you had an okay moment on the power play. You know what? You are on the team. And then we will jerk you up and down this lineup. And eventually you're just like not going to play that well. And we're going to healthy scratch you. And it is what it is. Like, it's so poorly run. But I think we need to qualify like selling a little bit here too. Because first of all, I don't think selling like tanks their season unless they trade Ekman Larson and potentially Carlo and or potentially Carlo. Like if they trade Ekman Larson, it's hard to like it's just like it's done. Like it's done. Like we're all watching the defense. We know it's done. They they do not have enough quality there to move Ekman Larson and remotely survive it. Unless there's some world where Chris Tanev comes back, which to this point he hasn't had like a season-ending surgery. He clearly wants to try to come back, all that stuff. Chris Tanev is coming back. There's a slightly different part to that equation. Like I want to acknowledge that. But short of Chris Tanev coming back, you trade Ekman Larson, this season is done. Like you need to win at a really high clip the rest of the way. You just cannot lose him. Because you're not going to get anything that's going to come into the lineup right away that's going to even be close to him.
No, of course not. And my assumption is right now, like again, my assumption is that I think they're probably going to be maybe more reluctant to do that than you could argue they should. But like I am living at this moment in the world of them not making the playoffs, but also not specifically quote unquote tanking just because it's not realistic for that pick. And so it's like you're letting the chips fall where they may, but with an eye to is there anything we can do? So like I'll give you some examples, right? Like I am giving Max Domi like a long sit
Hold on,
because I can't
let's not
learn
get to
anything about
forwards
him.
yet. Let's stay on defense for a sec here because we still have we're talking about Ekman Larson and potentially Tanev because I think there's another level to this which is next season, and that's to say like they do like this has to be it for Morgan Riley. Like it just we've said this a million times. Like it's time. It's just it's time. It's
You have to hope that he
it's
feels that way.
it's rode its course. No, like like to me at this point, you're making it clear. Like under no circumstances are you coming back, and if you do, you're not going to like how that goes for you, and it's going to be like we will make this World War III. Like you have to draw a line in the sand. I trust me, they wanted to move him last summer, right? And then it was like the whole heart to heart. Let's lose some weight. Let's this that whatever. They went out of their way to try to prop him up in the preseason. They already did that. Like, there's no more of that. Like, it has to be like, this is over. And either we work together and we do this amicably, or we make this an absolute miserable situation for everybody involved. And I'm not recommending the Leafs do this all the time, and it's a tricky one because you don't want to you don't want to open Pandora's box, but like there's a certain point where like you can actually use like the attention and the media coverage to your advantage. Because if it's like we don't want this guy and he just won't like it, that's not going to go well for Rielly publicly. Like that's at some point, like that's most
Well, it's
people
not
are going
something
to
he
turn on
can
him, not the
really
organization for that one.
he's not something he can live with for years and years and years, right?
No,
Like if there was one
no,
more year left on his contract, he could probably be like, okay, fuck off, everybody. Like it is what it
yeah,
is. I'm
no,
riding out this
there's,
year. But like
yeah,
that's not his
no,
contract situation.
it's too much time. And so in saying that about Rielly, it's like who's on the defense next year? You have your one other lefty is McCabe, and like hopefully Chris Tanev comes back, and then what? Maybe Carlo, maybe not. I would sign Troy Stetcher because I don't think Troy Stetcher's worth trading. Like you're not going to get a ton for him. He was a waiver claim. Like teams are gonna say like I'm not paying you like a second round pick for a guy you claimed on waivers that we could have for free like 3 months ago. It's just not going to happen like that. Like it won't for a
It's
guy that's
bad
31
optics.
and that's well known by the league. It's not like this is like some 25-year-old mystery box that just came out of nowhere with some opportunity. This is a 31-year-old guy that's been in the league for a long time. You're not getting a lot for him. And so to me, I like his spirit. I like his energy. I think he brings something to the team. I don't think he's a dead end with the puck. He defends hard. Like you need proper veterans and leaders no matter what stage of the organization you're in, whether you're rebuilding, whether you're trying to win, whether you're somewhere in between. You want good quality people in it. He's one of those guys to me that's way more valuable than like a fourth round pick. And I think it'll cost almost nothing to extend him. So all that says if you get rid of Rielly and you get rid of Ekman Larson, and you probably get rid of like one of the righties and or you can't trust Tanev. Like that's a hard defense to like how is that possibly going to get reconstructed
It's
in
tough,
an
right?
off
Like
season?
you've got what, McCabe, maybe Tanev, maybe Benoit if you want to do that, Carlo. I mean, again, re-signing Stetcher, it's that would be helpful. Someone you can put on the third pair. That's
Yeah,
like
he's in the
five
mix.
guys that you feel good about, three of them. One of them might not even exist.
So to me, that's part of the Ekman Larson equation. But obviously, like to me, the Leafs hold all the power in this negotiation, which is awesome for once. I mean, short of him like having no trade clause whatsoever, there is I think it's a 16 team no trade clause. So Ekman Larson has a say too.
Yeah, but it's going to be
But
the shit teams that aren't bidding for
yeah,
him
for
anyway.
sure.
Maybe with like one or two weird exceptions, but like that type of no trade doesn't really provide much.
Though, as a side note, I wonder how much that actually is in play. You know what I mean? Like you would have put, like I bet you most players would have put Buffalo as a shit team, but they're
Yeah,
not shit.
fair.
Detroit, right? We kind of go through
But
it. There's probably quite a few teams in that mix that might be buying. I mean, Buffalo wouldn't want Ekman Larson anyways. Like they're loaded up on defense. Detroit would, but I would be very hesitant to trade him to Detroit, short of like an axe. Like you would need an absolute haul to do that. So like when Boston traded Carlo, like they were doing it from an abundance of strength on defense already. Like they have McAvoy, they have Lindholm, they have Zadorov, they like Lowry, they have Peak. Like their defense was like you could trade him and be like, yeah, look at our group otherwise. Like we're pretty set. Like we have four top four guys anyway. The Leafs trade Ekman Larson, like they end the Rielly thing, and you're like, okay, who's like we're banking on 37-year-old Chris Tanev who missed the whole year coming back and being a guy. Like it's tough. It's not it's again, I would trade him in the right scenario, but it's just not as straightforward as like this is a sell high, just get what you can from him and like let's all move on. Because like you're gonna make your team a lot worse, and it's probably gonna be a lot worse next year too, without him, based compared to what you acquired for him, right? You would really have to hit on that move.
I buy it. It's just like for me, his age makes such a difference there. Like next year he's
Yeah,
35, the year after he's 36. So like as much, we
yeah,
talk about the difficulty of leaning on Tanev, and I know that there's a current health situation associated with that, but it's just saying like, oh, the defense is going to be good in the next couple of years, are going to be so much better because you have this guy who's 35, 36. I'm not sure that it won't be because I know what I've seen from Ekman Larson this year and I'm impressed. But again, the age makes such a difference for how they approach this or how they should approach this, as far as I'm
yeah.
concerned.
Just given the term and the fact the Leafs are trying to be good next year, though, if I'm just holding an insanely high price for him, and like it has to be met essentially. Like, yeah, of course I would trade him. I'd trade anyone on this team, including the top players. But like it has to be a price that makes sense where we look at that and say like, oh, okay. Like you brought in, like you got a high pick and you also brought in a prospect who you think can help the team like literally next season kind of thing. Like short of that, I'd be hard pressed to understand what the plan is. Because then if you just start selling him off, if you like you start going through it, and you're like, okay, then are we just rebuilding here? Like it's a very fine line to walk this whole let's sell, we want to be good next year. And so then that pushed us to the forward group where I do think that they have an excess of forwards, which while it's just focus on defense for a sec because I think their defense is a lot more convoluted to sort out, in part because you don't know what the deal is with Tanev, right? If Tanev was healthy, you could sit there and say, yeah, like trade Carlo and you'll have McCabe, Ekman Larson, and Tanev, and you can sign Stetcher, or trade Ekman Larson and you have three righties, and you know what I mean? Like it would be easier to swallow if you had confidence in Tanev. At forward, I don't think it's like that though. Like I like Bobby McMahon a lot. Like he's got size, he's got wheels, and he has a great shot. I still think Matthew Nye should be the guy on the top line. For all like as much as Nye's has been bad, and he has been, I think a healthy Nye's right this second is producing more than McMahon. He doesn't have as
I
many
mean,
goals, but he's been more productive, and he's
that
going to be
is
the better
the
player.
plan. Like that is
Yeah,
the explicit idea is for it to be Nyes Matthews over the longer term. Like we're just sitting in a weird moment where Nyes is struggling and it's also beneficial to showcase McMahon a little bit. Like I don't think anyone really believes that longer
yeah.
term Nyes isn't the number one left winger.
No, of course. And I've more of mean it to say like I could easily see a world in which you sell high on McMahon, Nyes gets healthy here over the Olympic break, comes back ready to go, and you're no worse for wear on
No,
him.
you'll be better,
Like, yeah,
presumably.
right? If Nyes was rolling and doing his thing, you would absolutely be better. So like that one to me is like again, you still need a good return. Like you have to set a high price and get it because I just relative to the market, McMahon should have a lot of value. But like that's one where I could sit there and say, yeah, like I still think Nyes is better in that spot when he's on his game, and I could easily see Nyes rediscovering it over the break here and coming back and trading McMahon wouldn't signal to me like the end, like we're for sure not making the playoffs kind of thing. Like it's done in the right way. And you kind of go through that with the forward group too. It's like I like Scott Laughton. The way they used him against Edmonton was honestly what they should have been doing all year. He played like 15 minutes. He moved up the lineup. He closed the game on that empty netter with Matthews and McMahon. Blocked a cross ice pass as Edmonton was attacking the seams. He was good on the PK. He moved up to the second line at times. Matthews played with him a little bit at 5-on-5 for the odd shift. Like they should be doing that. The thing is, Nick, they haven't done it most of the season. We've honestly been looking, being like, oh, another 10,
Yeah,
11 minute night.
once every 3 games, you'll see him take one shift on the second line. You're like,
Yeah.
cool.
And I'm like, okay, well, if Jacob Quillen's replacing 10 minutes Scott Laughton, are you really worse for wear? Probably not. Your penalty kill is going to suck for sure. It's not probably not suck, but it's definitely not going to be as good without Laughton. Like that's your one area where you're like this could be problematic. It's like who's going to kill penalties? Nick Waugh and Steven Lorentz and maybe Dakota Joshua comes back kind of thing. And then there's like the glut of small wingers where you're like something's got to go here, whether it's Domi, whether it's Michelli, whether it's Robertson. Like you already see it with Cowan out of the lineup. Like you definitely can't have all four of those guys in the lineup. And honestly, you shouldn't have three. It should be two.
Yeah,
So
I
it's like,
mean, I think, getting rid of Domi is that's a getting rid of a player exercise. Like, how can you make that happen? I think it's time to make that happen. Like, I defended the idea of having him on the first line because I thought it was the only way to make the lineup work, but he's not good enough to justify the project. Like, he just isn't.
and
So,
and we're
like,
saying this off a time where he's been productive. Like I think he has points in 7 of his last 8 games,
yeah,
but it doesn't matter.
I don't care. That's fine. What's interesting is the two restricted free agents, right? In Michelli and Robertson. And so one, I'm not sure there's a huge market for either player. I think Robertson has, he's played well recently. He's talented. I think, the type of team that is headed towards the playoffs, again, there's probably some thought of like, is he a playoff type contributor, fair or unfair? Like as the season goes on, I think I'd want to play both of those guys further as far up the lineup as makes sense because I want to have a good read on them. So when you talk about like who are the four small wingers that you don't want to have in the lineup together, I see Domi who just needs to be gone in one way or another. I see Cowan who they're absolutely blowing his development, as you've said. So like I want to see him in the AHL realistically. So I don't see it as a huge I guess, a huge problem in the sense that like I want to look at Michelli and Robertson and figure out if I want to sign those guys because we've talked about it before. Like there's not a lot of youth, there's not a lot of upside in this forward group as much as there is talent there. And I don't hate the idea of carrying one or both those guys forward. It's just I don't think you can feel super sure about either of them just yet. Robertson's been the better one, arguably. So I'd like to have as much time to make that decision as I could, considering I don't think I'm going to get some haul for either player.
Yeah, and that's really this is like an exercise in mapping everything out whereby yes, you evaluate every trade off of the trade itself. I don't like when people sit there and say, well, this is a precursor to another move, so like that move's okay. It's like, no, no, it's either a good trade or a bad trade. There's no like this is good because that and this and that. That's not how this works. Like you have to consistently win your moves, right? And play it out that way and build wins essentially. Um, which is still going to apply for the Leafs at the trade deadline. As part of that, though, there's like a bigger picture scheme where it's really like a 2 year deadline of like, what are you doing this year? How are you setting the stage for next year? And how is that all coming together? Like, are you acquiring, like, if you acquire a first round pick for Bobby McMahon, let's say, now what? Why does that matter? Let's say it's the 25th overall pick, Nick.
Well, it depends what year that pick is. Like there's a world where it's a first round pick next season. Like that, I think that's a very real possibility, especially for a type of player who might be sort of considered fringe first round value, in which case it's sort of a future asset that you use later. If it's this year, I guess there are off-season trades at the draft that happen. Like I think the team is still at this point with the Matthews window where you're thinking about draft picks as assets first and development opportunities second. Does that mean you never take your pick? Like, no, you see the consequences of never taking your pick. That's where the Leafs are now to some extent. So if they got a first round pick, and as you said, it's a 25th overall, and they take a prospect they like, I don't think that's a terrible outcome. But when the Leafs are in the business of getting draft picks, I think they're
It's
still
it's
doing
not
out
a
the idea
terrible
of
outcome,
reloading.
but if you're trying to win next year, who cares? Like, what's that doing?
Well, it's trying to make sure that your future, you don't find yourself in the situation you are now, where you have no prospects either to trade or to develop.
To like, I do think it's important that they restock draft capital. So I don't want to dismiss that. Like, that is important. You can't draft three times this summer, and those picks being the third and fifth and sixth round picks. Like, that can't happen. That cannot happen. But if you're removing a good player from your lineup, which Bobby McMahon is, like there has to be a plan. The plan can't just be like, let's draft 25th overall and then what? Overpay someone else in free agency? At that rate, you're pretty much better with the devil you know.
Well, I think that's up for debate. Like I think depending on what player you get and what the contract is, you normally are overpaying in free agency. I think that's a fair statement. But like, would I rather overpay for a player in free agency when I do have cap room and also get a young player for the future? Like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad scenario at the end of the day to be like, I'm gonna be willing to spend a little bit more here so that I can do some of this restocking that needs to get done. Like, that's not a very sexy way to go about it, but I don't think that that's like an illegitimate way to take the team building project forward. Like Bobby McMahon, there's not a lot of great players in free agency. We know this, but he's not the type of player who's like head and shoulders over anyone you could find in free agency.
Yeah, and I do think that they could find other guys that can produce his output in free agency without question. Hell, they could sign back Michael Bunting, and he could probably not just match his point total, but probably surpass it. And there's like a proof of concept. I just want to know like there's a sorted out plan here whereby we're
Well,
not just like
you might be
watching.
dealing with the wrong general manager and front
Yeah,
office if you want to know that there's a plan
like
that makes
like
sense.
like the plan can't just be you get this first round pick, Marner walks out the door, and you trade for Matthias Michelli. Like that can't be the plan. It has to be not if you're trying to win. If you're just trying to be this like crappy, mediocre, middling team, then yeah, keep doing that stuff, and that's where you're gonna end up. Keep the coach too while we're at it. Like it needs to be a little bit like if they're bringing on some picks, like are they then intaking those to then further flip them at the draft, at whatever, for somebody else, right? It's like Noah Dobson got traded at the draft. They had no chance of being in on Noah Dobson. They did not have the capital. If you're adding those picks, is it to then flip them further? There's so many moving parts I find right now with this group in terms of like, who would you want to keep? Who would you want to trade? What are you getting for those guys? How is that in turn making you a better hockey team when the plan is to still try to be a good hockey team next year?
Well, that's the difficulty of it, right? Like, I know people like to flag the Boston situation, and Boston did a good job of turning things around quickly. And we can talk about the degree to which their season is a little bit fraudulent. And, I don't think it's a great hockey team necessarily. But the reality is, most of the times when you're in this situation and you're shipping players out, like you're asking, like, we need to be really specific about what the plan for this asset is. Most of the time, you don't have to do that because most of the time you're like, we're shit. We're going to get rid of veteran players. We're going to get assets. We're either going to develop guys for the future. Hell, maybe there'll be a trade that comes up, whatever. We just want to be better in the general future to some degree, and this will help us do that. And with the Leafs, as you said, like this team by all accounts, wants to be good specifically next year. How are you going to accomplish that goal? Like, it is a tough tightrope. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying like they should get let off the hook if they fuck this up, because there's been some letting off the hook that goes on around these parts,
No, they
less so
need it.
recently, but like it
If
is difficult. Like that should be acknowledged.
if they draft three times this summer after missing the playoffs, people need to get like immediately like you need to clean out everybody top to bottom. Like that can't happen. But what I will ask you, hot on the spot right now, Olympic break, and Bobby McMahon comes to you and he says, I want to stay. Give me 4 mil times 4 years, and we're done. Do you do that or are you trading him?
I I mean it's tough because I'm partial to Bobby
Ah,
McMahon.
ah. Now the plot thickens, Nicholas.
It's so I think from a like if I want to zoom out, like big zoom out here, like intellect from the most intellectual perspective, I think there's probably more surplus value in what you get for Bobby McMahon than there is in Big Man on that contract, which I think is a good value contract, the contract you presented. But again, because the Leafs are in this position where they are trying to win in the interim, like sometimes it's not necessarily about being the most efficient. Like you have to be good. And Bob McMahon helps you be good. And so I think I probably would be willing to sign that extension because of the goals of where the Leafs are.
That's fair. So then you kind of look, it's like, well, other people have to go then. Like if we're keeping him, like other people, which other people do need to go, right?
For sure.
Like I look at this center, it's like you can't keep Scott Laughton and Nick Waugh again next year. Like you have to move one of them. Like if Nick Waugh gets you a first round pick and a prospect, which in my opinion he should, because the Leafs paid a first and a prospect for Scott Laughton. And my estimation, Nick Waugh is younger, bigger, more experienced, has been more productive in his career. Like you go down the line, there's no he's right-handed. Like you go through it, Nick Waugh should net you more than Scott Laughton did. They're literally signed to the same contract at that time. It was a year and a half remaining, 3 mil a year, and the Leafs paid for retention. So like if that's the move, then that's the move. Like there's got to be something that happens, I think, of note that's like, okay, they got a first round pick back or they got a prospect back. I just I'm gonna just constantly have that in the back of my mind going like, okay, well then how is this gonna make them better next season if that is in fact the plan, which to me that is their only plan at this point, unless they say, you know what, like we're just gonna trade our top guys and like rebuild and like blow it
I,
up. But which I don't think they should do, but
this is like, this is not going to sound inspiring, but genuinely, I think their best hope for getting better next season is addition by subtraction. It is the
For
coach,
sure it is.
it
Morgan
is it
Rielly.
is Domi, it's Rielly. Like
Yeah.
and I'm not saying like those are the only three people who fucked up this season, but like it's that kind of stuff. Like that they have a better chance of improving that way than they do of adding some incredible impact player in the offseason.
Like a needle mover of significance. Yeah. The only way that you could is if you in turn like trade a bunch of these guys for picks. And there's probably three guys that can get you a first round pick that aren't like you would be bad the rest of the year if you traded Waugh, McMahon, and Ekman Larson and got first round picks for all of them. But then if you have that capital moving forward to then flip it for a needle mover ready to go, then you would be better. It's
I
just how does that all
I
come together?
I also just don't have faith that they're going to be able to pull that off. Like I just don't have faith in
Yeah, I mean,
Treliving or I don't know, maybe incoming general manager in the offseason. Like it what feels like is going to happen to me, maybe this is unfair, maybe it's an anti-Treliving bias at this point, but what feels like is going to happen to me is that they'll trade Lawton and McMahon and that's it. And then they'll just kind of ride it out to the end of the year, try to give themselves some hope of making the playoffs and say, oh, well, we
Yarncroke,
intend to be really good next year, so we weren't trading anyone who has term for next year. That feels like
Yarncroke,
what's going to happen.
Benoit, like at least get some forts. Sprinkle on like that. Like those ones to me are again like more in the addition by subtraction category, and also like let's get a young guy in there and see what he can do kind of thing. So it's a very like we purposely left this episode to after the 3 p.m. Olympic deadline, just in the event had the Leafs done anything, we wanted to, not record and then find out that they made a trade. Obviously, they didn't make a trade. Um, obviously, I still want to sell. Like, I just want to see them kind of maximize it. For me, the approach of it all is like I want some young players back. I want some guys that you might look at some point between now and halfway through next season can come up and play for the Leafs. That's not happening. If you draft like 25th overall, you're not seeing that guy for a while.
No,
Couple
they're
years
not going to
at,
do the Easton Cowan
yeah,
career trajectory.
yeah. And even then, right, it still took
Yeah.
some time. Like it's not helping you next year for sure. But if you can bring in some younger guys, I mean, the joke would be Fraser Minton, obviously. Um, but like that kind of idea, right? Where it's like guy playing in the American League or guy ready to graduate from whatever league he's in and has the chance to come in either at the end of this season to take a look or the beginning of next season, or at some point next season, you have to the beginning. It could be to the Marlies and then he comes up halfway through kind of thing. That makes sense to me. It's like an injection of youth. I think at times like they've referenced being like a veteran team and it's felt like a veteran team going through the motions, like too much so. I do think that there's something to, that like youthful vibe being in the room, especially in the first half of the season when the game is a little bit different before things kind of buckle down. Like, I would just want to see a few of those kind of guys targeted if you can pull it off. It's like adding a first round pick like 2 years from now. I mean, as nice as that is, it's never a bad thing to have them. But like, we're talking about moving off of guys that will like even if like I get people have mixed feelings on Carlo. Like if they moved Carlo and Chris Tanev's not coming back, like they're like now what? Troy
Yeah,
Stetcher's your top
right
right-handed
side
defenseman?
guys are not easy to come by.
You're praying to God for the opportunity to overpay Rasmus Anderson or Darren Radish. And you could make an argument to sign one of those guys. Like there's honestly a very notable argument that they probably should at least try in the summer for both of them. Like at least one, but whatever. Right? But like it gets grim pretty quickly. Like if you're moving him, like you're bad. Like you're bad. Like Philip Myers is like borderline top four. Like you're cooked. Right? Like so if you're doing that, it's like you gotta it to me like just getting some draft picks for that is not worth it. Like it has to be unless you just again decide that you're blowing the whole thing up, because that's what that would mean to me.
I don't think I don't I understand why you say that. I don't think it counts as blowing the whole thing up until Matthews, Nylander, or Nylander is gone. I think at that point you're still the terminology is still going to be retooling, but that's an aggressive and
You can use
dangerous
whatever
retool.
word at that point, but you're screwing them over effectively. Like if you're Matthews, you're looking at that, you're going like, what are we doing here?
And that's,
But
you know, that's a big part of this is like Matthews' future with the team. And yeah, I know there was the Friedman report that he like it sounded like he renewed his vows to the Leafs. Obviously, no words from him, nothing in public. So I'm not really too into whatever that was. But you know, that's a factor they're going to think about too, right? If they're absolutely dog shit next year, like that plays a role in how that goes.
it's not really in his DNA to do it, but in like a world where Matthews kind of just came out publicly and said like, I'm not going anywhere. Like this is my team. I'm the captain. We're going to turn this thing around. It would be the easiest way for him to buy like goodwill in public. It's like the bar is so incredibly low. Like you just have to just come out and be like, like I'm not leaving this place. Like this is my team. And people will love you. Like it's
Yeah,
that easy. Like I'm
but
watching,
I think he wants to leave the door open for himself.
yeah, and maybe, and that's, but maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But when there's an absence of that kind of comment, it opens the door for those kinds of thoughts to pop into your head and go, well, I mean, if he's not saying it publicly, then how much does it really matter? Right. And, I'm watching the Panthers. They're in a similar boat as the Leafs this year. They're in tough and they just lost to Buffalo. And I heard Matthew Tkachuk, and after the game, he was like, we're in trouble. And I thought about that. And then I thought about Matthew Nye saying, like, I haven't even looked at the standings. Like, that's how confident I am. And I'm like, man, like Florida's going to be in real tough to make the playoffs this year. They may or may not do it. And if they do get into the playoffs, there will be zero teams that want to play them. That will be the worst possible matchup for anybody. The worst division winning award ever. Um, but I just look at Florida and like that's a team that's like had success and like that's just like a guy being honest. And I think what pisses off fans often, it's like you got like the nice comments and you're like, are you just delusional? Like I don't understand like where your head is at here. And at least like and Kachuk has like nothing to do with Florida being like he's been hurt all year. Like he sacrificed his body for these 3 cup runs and he's just stepped back into the fire. And like if they had Kachuk all year, they'd probably be fine and in the playoffs pretty confidently. And he's still sitting there and he's like we're in trouble. Like there's a real like sense of urgency and like just an ability to articulate like where they're at and the problems they're at. And I think the thing that's always bothered people, not the only thing, but one of the things that's always bothered people about these guys, like they completely have like zero ability to do that, to just sit there and say like, shit, like this isn't good, and like connect with fans that way, and like be able to have that dialogue in like an intelligent way from you through to the media to them, instead of this like I don't even look at the standings. That's how confident I am we're going to make it as we sit with like a 5% chance to make the playoffs and things of that nature, right? Like sometimes just owning it, right?
I think that there's this notion that like the market is so scary that like if you show any kind of doubt or weakness, then you know the piranhas are going to descend on you. And I think the degree to which this is a tough market from a media standpoint is often overstated, by the players and the team. And different players have different experiences, but I think you're right in that if a player was a little bit more candid and willing to say that they were in trouble or that things are going poorly or that like it is an unfortunate state of affairs or whatever, like I think things wouldn't go as badly for them as they might imagine of like, oh no, I'm going to open Pandora's box with all the attention here. Like I don't think that it would actually be a huge problem in any way.
No, not at all. And so, yeah, we conclude on this note of like be a little bit more authentic and real as a player. I'm sure fans will gravitate towards it a lot more than a lot of the current things that happen. But then at the same time, you probably have to sell because you're a little bit you're 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 not out of it, but it's a big gap still. Like it is a big gap. And that's like assuming Boston loses after we record this podcast. So, which is not a safe assumption at all. And then at the same time, you're trying to manage the sell whereby you still want to be good next year, but you need to replenish your cupboard that's completely empty and also try to find a way to bring in some upgrades in your lineup. Like it's a lot of work to do. But like if they want to be good next year, like they really need to nail down this deadline. Like if Brad Treliving wants like any leg to stand on that he should continue to be the GM, like this has to be just a home run of a trade deadline. This is the most important trade deadline of his entire life. Like it's going to be hard for him to be a GM after this if it doesn't go well. And so like he's got to show some real chops and vision here, or else it's curtains, Nick.
All right, that seems like a fine place to end today's episode. We really appreciate you guys who are listening in. We appreciate it even more when you're leaving ratings, reviews, watching us on YouTube as we're looking down the barrel of the Olympic break here. I'm normally promising we'll be back next week. I cannot promise you that this time. I'm not sure exactly when you'll be back, but we will when the Leafs are playing hockey again. And as Anthony just said, this is an absolutely critical deadline. We will have a lot to talk about in the weeks ahead.